What's up, guys? It is a bright, sunny Sunday out here, in Virginia where I'm at and stuff, and might have to overlook a little bit of this. I don't usually worry about this and stuff, but I think I worked like something like close to 60 hours last week. I can honestly say it was like hell week at work for me, and ended up just kind of recovering all weekend, and since kind of like heading north here. Been doing some of those Ace, Paul, Gene, Peter Google chats. They're not broadcasts and stuff, just kind of like a rotation of people coming in, hanging out, talking about comics and stuff. And last night was on it for a couple hours, and as everybody, met some great people, man, some great channels and stuff. It's just really cool to get a community feel again. That was here. And as the Google chat went on and people had things to do and spend time with their family and eat and other things and stuff, ended up just kind of hanging out with Dr. Silver Age and a guy named Joe, who I've talked to 2 or 3 times, and I've got to get his channel name, so I can talk to him and stuff and have a real good conversation. And then I finally fell asleep last night, and I'm still recovering today. Got up, moved around, did a little breakfast and all this stuff. Ended up taking a nap at 11. I'm not a nap taker. I'm a freaking night owl with insomnia half the time, so that tells you something. But anyway, yesterday, first thing that happened is sometimes these packages that I'll get sent to me from some friends and stuff just hit on the right time. So after like that hell week and stuff, I went in to the post office yesterday, and I'm not gonna lie, man, the way that week went, I was sort of like, oh, I'd just seen what's there, because I didn't get home for a week. I had to stay out there, near where I was working and stuff. But it went in, and there was like this huge package from Steve. I was like, oh crap! And everybody in the post office looked at me because I yelled "oh crap" at the same time, and it's full of really good stuff. And it's just so good to know that people think of you, and you kind of think of them and stuff like that. But when you have those times where you're just kind of like drained a little bit and just trying to recover, and bam, there you are. There's some comics and stuff, right? So what was in this package is, I'll get through it now. I've been talking a lot here. He and I had a talk about Evel Knievel on the phone a few weeks ago, and hooked him and somebody else up too. I've had 2 conversations about Evel Knievel and stuff. And what you got to understand about Evel Knievel, for you guys who don't know, he was a daredevil in the 60s and 70s and has a son with a legacy and all this stuff, is that, as a kid, I got 2 childhoods. I've said all this before, but, I had 2 childhoods. I turned 7 in 1980. So I had the 70s, and then the 80s where, I kind of grew up, But had this daredevil who went out, and he was, you were seeing this guy get on a motorcycle and jump over cars and stuff, and sometimes there was a wreck. Sometimes it didn't go well. It just messed up, and the man is known for breaking every bone in his body, more or less, and he kept going. And as a kid, we all rode our bikes and stuff, and everything like that. But it was that adventurous spirit that he gave us. I mean, I heard, you kind of get cynical as you get older and hear about heroes and all this stuff, and real life heroes and stuff. But here's a guy that was like, they didn't have the math back then to do this. They didn't build the motorcycles to jump things back then. They didn't do any of this. This guy figured it out as he went along, man. And he kind of taught you to take what you have and push it and yourself to the limits and stuff. You didn't have the words. You just got up and you went and did it. And there's nothing like getting with all the neighborhood kids and stuff would get together, and everybody's building ramps and getting air and stuff. It was like one life provided by Evel Knievel, man. And as you grew with that attitude that you didn't even know got planted in you, that's priceless. So Steve ended up sending me the biography of Evel Knievel, and I'm just like, this is cool, man. So I'm like, yeah, this is a comic book channel, but this was the gym for me, man. I'm just like, yes, And they've got this great documentary. I found it on a online channel that's it's kind of pirated and stuff, but I watched the great documentary on the guy, and he was the real deal, man. You think Fonzie was cool, some of the shit he pulled, you're just like, wow, But anyway, some other stuff he gets sent me was, I talk about comic book history on here. I haven't done it for a while, but I can do it at a drop of a hat, it seems like sometimes, and I have to apologize sometimes to people because I'll just get going and stuff, and so I love reading stuff like this. Comic Fandom Reader. It's a bunch of fanzines put together with a little bit of history in here, and they reminisce about comics in the old days, and You get some great art there. There's some great. I mean, to me, that's Flash Gordon, if anything, very Al Williamson inspired. I don't know who Steve Ditko did it. Steve Ditko influenced by Al Williamson. Forgive me, you know. So yeah, just great stuff in here, and this is things like the Black Hawk Saga, the Rutland, Vermont Halloween Parade, which, you know, if you are a comic book collector, you need to look up what the Rutland, Vermont Parade is, because Roy Thomas started putting it in comics. It's a real parade up in Vermont. And then, you know, get like, you know, Eisner, a man in his work, and I saw some other stuff in here that's not on the cover, but that was just fantastic. You know, this thing is just full of stuff. Oh, just good stuff. Anyway, I don't want to sit there and start reading it while I'm on air. Then we get to the books and stuff. Sent me a little collected edition of Evangeline. This is by, you know, Chuck Dixon, Charles Dixon there, you know. One of the greatest, you know, underappreciated writers in comics, man, you know. But anyway, this is a collected edition. This is through a Lodestone Comics, which I never heard of, but for some reason it rang a bell. But there was a Doom Patrol character named Lodestone at one time, so maybe that's where I'm coming from. But this actually collects two comics that he did at another independent company before, and it's her whole story. You know, I'm looking forward to it. Might be an interesting read. Chuck Dixon does some good stuff. And then go on with that, we got Chuck Dixon and Tim Truman, a bi-weekly book, 50 cents here. Number 1 of Airboy Reborn. It's kind of thin, so I'm wondering if it's, you know, I'm not sure. You know, it's from Eclipse Comics. I know who Airboy is. You know, he's been around for a while, but be interested to read that. And to look up, you know, what this is. It looks like where they went bi-weekly, they may have just done smaller comics. And it was 50 cents back in the 80s. Something else I've never seen. This is from First Comics, but apparently this was a 2-part sampler series of, you know, probably a First Comics. You know, give you a little taste. I haven't cracked it open yet, man, but it's got like John Sable in there. As you can see, go around American Flag, Dreadstar, Whisper, you know. And going back and reading some of these 80s books, independent books that either weren't available or I just wasn't really interested in, that are a lot better than what's coming out today. So just saying, all right. And now we're in a part here where he really sent me something that is awesome, man. You know, as a kid, you know, some of the things I was into, you know, of course, you know, bikes, riding my bikes and stuff, hanging out with my friends if I'd go out and stuff, stayed out a lot and stuff. And then I had things that were kind of like mine, wrestling in the morning. I mean, of course, all kids were watching wrestling, but really probably wasn't until 80, 85, 86, you know, the Rock and Roll Express was the one that kind of, people were talking about it where I'm at and stuff. You had the regional territories back then and stuff. And you know, you stayed out a whole lot, and but the things that I was in, you know, as life cycles and stuff. You'll see where I'm going with this. Was, you know, it was like comic books and the video games and the wrestling, and then you had things like Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of that stuff, except for the video games, to be honest and stuff, it was really looked down on. You know, had that stigma and stuff. So it kind of blows my mind for all these things over the last, I don't know, 15 years to really kind of blow up. You know, I mean, probably 2008 with the Iron Man movie, you know what I'm saying, was where it probably popped. But, you know, I've seen a lot of this stuff get accepted. So to see all these role-playing games and comic books and stuff to come mainstream, it's always going to be kind of weird for me, you know. You just got to adapt. So, but there are things where, you know, we always have this thing where we kind of appreciate back in the day when it felt like it was more personal and more yours before everybody else kind of piled on it and stuff. You don't own it, you know what I mean? And it's a good thing that people get into it, and now, you know, you can discuss things and stuff. But after seeing how all this hobby and stuff's kind of blown up over the years, it's kind of cool to have a little corner that's still yours, you know, from when you were a kid. And that's the Legion of Superheroes for me. You know, I've mentioned here before, and they've always been there because Legion of Superheroes is sort of like a bittersweet thing. It's like that may be the one book that was the escapism for me as a kid. I didn't have the words, but it's really odd how the things in the times I remember, you know, grabbing a Legion book or buying a Legion book and stuff, right? Because as a kid, you know, if your parents don't get along, and what people don't realize, I only speak for little boys and stuff, is like if your parents aren't getting along, even if they're not fighting in front of you, or maybe you've heard of them the night before and they didn't know it or anything like that, but as a kid, like I said, I can only speak for a little boy, You come in, you can sense a tension. You can sense the stress. You can sense something being off. You go in a room and you get the feel for it and stuff. And it's really odd. It seems like when those times would happen, I would either buy or have, a Legion of Superheroes comic book. And as I got older and stuff, and I went through my divorce, I ended up marrying somebody who had a lot of qualities like my stepdad, which was really odd how that happened, because I didn't see those qualities before we actually married. Um, and so I ended up like really having a talk with my mom after my divorce and stuff. Like, I get it. We were actually able to talk on a whole other level, of maturity, I guess. Got past that mom son thing for a little bit. And it was mom and her grown man having a talk and stuff. And I got it. We were able to talk about things and stuff, right? So the Legion, actually bought my first comic book that I bought. I read comics before because they were my uncles, my stepdads, and they were everywhere and stuff. But this was my first comic book, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. I think this is 255 from 1979. And it's real interesting because I bought this off the rack with my money. It was 40 cents. And it's a Whitman variant. So somebody might have popped open one of those 3-packs or something, put them at, but it was at a Doran drugstore. That I think might still be there and stuff, right? In '79. And then when my mom and dad split up when I was a kid and stuff, we'd go to town. We moved out of town, and when we would go to town, we went to a store named Magmart, and I ended up getting these, and they were full of Legion stories. These are Adventure Digest, right? So I would get these, and it's Silver Age. You get 2 Silver Age stories of the Legion. You get some Spectre, some Grey Zatanna, Elastic Lad, some Kirby Guardian from the 40s, and the Newsboy Legion and stuff. These were 100 pages. And I was reading these, and it was kind of cool. I'd get one every month. And the reason I don't have issue 500 in here is because we actually went to visit my stepdad. They ended up getting mom and stepdad ended up getting back together within a year or something like that. But he had stolen my issue 500, which had the classic Legion story about bringing Lightning Lad back to life. And he, I saw it in the room that he was staying at, and I said that was mine. He's like, no, that's mine, and he stole my damn book. So that's what I'm trying to say. So probably a year before that, probably I'm trying to think if I'm remembering this right. There's a lot going on. I was real young back then, but when my grandfather died, it was my grandmother's second husband. When he died, I kind of left the funeral parlor. I was just like a kid. There's a year on here, probably like 83 if I had to guess. So I just kind of had to get out of there for a minute, and this was a different time where you could walk around town as a kid and nobody flipped out and they didn't see you and stuff. And I went across the street to a place called Helen's and Nancy's, and it was like an old rundown soda shop. They still served burgers and stuff and had comic books on the rack in there. And I remember getting some Daredevil and stuff, but I ended up buying this one. And the lady obviously saw me as I got older and figured it out, saw me coming from the funeral parlor and stuff, and I got a shake and got this book, Legion of Superheroes number 300, an anniversary issue. I've upgraded it since then. So that's what I'm saying. When it comes to the Legion, there's this weird kismet with it, where it's bittersweet, man. It's an optimistic future, influenced by the Silver Age of comics. All the characters in it, when they formed the Legion of Superheroes, were influenced by the legend of Superboy. And now that as time's gone by and we've seen the reboots and Superboy did exist and he didn't exist and everything like that, I kind of like to think of it, it's more of the romantic mythology that's traveled 1,000 years in the future of Superboy. This is why they wear costumes and they make up superhero names that end with boy or lad, or lass or girl. It's over the years, the stigma is gone and it's grown into like our Greek and Roman legends or Celtic legends or mythologies or whatever you want, and it's kind of cool. So it's always been inspired by that. It's one of the books that was just really of in the midst of the 80s and stuff. You had the grim and gritty, you had the dark fantasy of books getting dark covers and stuff. Best way I know how to do is to like point out movies like you went from the Muppet movie in '79 to the Dark Crystal in '82, Secrets of NIMH, of the early 80s from Don Bluth, when you had things like The Rescuers and Robin Hood and stuff in the 70s. It kind of took a dark turn, but you still had this optimistic thing going on with the future of the DC universe inspired by the Silver Age. Yeah, there was death and things like that, but it was always bright and optimistic. Yeah, and it sounds cheesy, you know, as you get older and stuff, but no, it's a good thing. So he's ended up sending me a whole bunch of Legion books, and it's kind of cool. You know, it's what I mean. I mean, I really appreciate these. And these Legion books come from '98 to about 2000, because what happened with the Legion of Superheroes books is that you know, they started out in the '50s and they were backup features, and you know, it was always a little bit of a cult following, and they were always tied to Superboy and Paul Levitz and you know Mike Grell and a whole lot of people over the years. Jim Starlin even popped in there, but he went by the name Steve Apollo. And you know, people worked on the Legion. Keith Giffen. You know, they kept these stories going, you know, even from the Silver Age. You know, Kurt Swan was on them back in the day and everything like that. And what happens with all the reboots of like Zero Hour and a little bit of Crisis and a few other things that happened over the years, they ended up rebooting them, and they kind of ended up retelling the older stories, like in an update version. And some of that stuff I kind of skipped because I knew the stories. And now we're at a point here where these are more or less newer stories for me because they introduced a lot of characters. They've gotten past all those. They moved forward with the books with Roger Stern and the Bivens and Tom Pyre and all this stuff. So you had so here's some of the books. You know, you've listened to me talk long enough. Sorry guys. You know, but here's Legionnaires. This is 62, and I think these go all the way up to the end of the series before they went into Legion Lost, which was a fantastic 12-issue miniseries. 63, like I said, they brought in a whole bunch of new characters, and just from flipping through these and looking at the characters, they really did start focusing on newer characters that were brought into the Legion. 64. You know, it's always had that. Like I said, it's always had that. They have a Legion charter. They're always diverse. You know, different aliens. You know, they had a clubhouse which was run kind of like when you're a kid and you want to make little rules and stuff. What's going on? 66, 67. Like I said, and I love getting into these. And I'm a huge. My favorite Legionnaire is Ultra Boy, but I always had, you know, Sun Starboy was always cool too, man. He was one of the first characters to actually end up killing somebody by accident. He was kicked out of the Legion. Jim Shooter, when he was like 13, 14, was sending in scripts and stuff for the Legion of Superheroes. When Dave Cockrum got into the Legion back in the 70s and stuff, Nightcrawler from the X-Men was one of his designs, and he was originally slated to be in the Legion of Superheroes and ended up in the X-Men. It's great stuff, man. You know, there's all kinds of little ties to the Legion and stuff. Timberwolf predates Wolverine, you know. I'm trying to think. We usually have all kinds of like little nitbits and stuff. When Dave Cochran and Chris Claremont were doing the X-Men, after Giant Size X-Men and stuff, the Shi'ar had an Imperial Guard, and it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing because they're the Legion of Superheroes, is what they are. They even had a character named Gladiator, who has a mohawk, and you can tell he was Superman, but the name Gladiator comes from a book in the 20s that predates Superman that everybody's always felt like his influence. I actually did a video on that a couple years ago, and somebody who runs some kind of foundation for the author of something who wrote Gladiator stuff saw the video and complimented it. So I was like, yay. All right, and then this is the Legionnaires book that I just showed you was sort of it's a million issue. I'm getting close to getting this. The Legionnaires were basically, they did this thing with the Legion of Superheroes where they went 5 years into the future and turned it into this dark and gritty world. You know, the United Nations planets had broke down and the legions were scattered everywhere and things like that. And they found these clones of all the Legion of Superheroes that looked like they were from the 50s. And then they split them off into their own book, and they started changing the direction of the Legion of Superheroes book, getting away from that dark and gritty feel. And they never really answered, to the best of my knowledge, who were the clones. Was it the grown-up Legionnaires, or was these kids where they put in suspended animation somewhere? And just to give you an idea, they started acknowledging. I've already read a few of these after Steve sent them to me to see where the book was at, so I could do this video. And this shows you all the reboots and stuff. They started acknowledging things like we had the Silver Age. That's probably my favorite Legion. We had the Mike Grell years with Paul Levitz and probably a few other people from the 70s, which always blew my mind because I never noticed how it looked like Cosmic Boy was wearing a corset. It's also kind of called the bathing suit age because Dave Cochran designed it in a way where it looks like everybody's wearing bathing suits, and Mike Grell jumped on there. You know, then we have like, you know, probably the Legionnaires, and up here we have that 5 years after gritty stuff where the Legion is old and the universe is just torn to pieces and nobody knows who anybody is because they don't wear costumes and they use their real name. So I acknowledged a lot of that stuff, man. And Alan Davis came on and started doing the covers for this. Here's 106 and stuff. I mean, just great stuff, man. Really looking forward to looking at these. 107. But like I said, the Legion's always had a cult following, and in the 2000s, they finally had a Legion of Superheroes cartoon, which I thought was cool. Was not. I think they messed up trying to make it too kid friendly, to be honest with you. Because despite the Legion being a bunch of teenagers and stuff, they always went head first into some really adult topics and stuff, adult stuff in there without going overboard and ripping it. Really layered. A lot of relationships between Legion members getting married, just some awesome stuff in there. And then like we have a throwback here. They had a book that came out of Invasion. I want to say it was like in 1990, 91 or something, somewhere around there. Maybe even 89. But they started coming out with a series of books called Legion, and they would have the year that it was coming out, Legion 89, Legion 90, Legion 91. And it was in the present day out in space. And it's always kind of had ties to the Legion of Superheroes very loosely. Like Phantom Girl got trapped in the past and had no memory of who she was or how she got there. Meanwhile, the Legion was freaking out like, where did Phantom last go? They tied it in there. Fearsome Five, one of the greatest evil groups ever. The Persuader, and then of course, on the book, we ended up getting Dan Abbott and Andy Lanning and some Oliver Capelli. I think it was Oliver Capelli coming on there at Legion, and this was towards the end of the run. And they shot off to Legion Lost, which was a 12-issue miniseries about, kind of like Star Trek Voyager, where they were stuck on the other side of the universe and they had to get back. They took a handful of the Legion of Superheroes and kind of did that to them, but it was just outstanding, And there's the last issue, So that was it. So anyway, that's me talking about the Legion, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So thanks, Steve Ogden. I think I'm going to spend the rest of my day going through some books here to start putting on eBay. In that live chat I was talking about, I got asked a question about how many books I have, and I'm between 12 and 14,000 again, and it's time to just start taking some chunks out and getting rid of them. And then, I got an actual haul video of stuff I found around town and all this stuff to put on there, so I might do that too. All right, guys, check it out. Thank you so much, Steve. As always, man, great to hearing from you. Great having those talks with you on the phone, and thanks for the books, brother. Later, guys.